Hello, this is Joe Yuhan here, talking to you guys again about nerve mobility and demonstrating my two favorite on-the-go sciatic nerve stretches. Before we get into that though, I want to talk again about the importance of nerve mobility, why nerves get stuck, and then what's novel about these two on-the-go stretches. So let's talk about nerves. Nerves are long electrical cables that serve to transmit information and to control various parts of our body. So this I like to act out as our sciatic nerve, and our sciatic nerve is the biggest nerve in our leg. It does a lot of stuff for almost the whole leg. That begins in the head, travels down the spine, comes off the lumbar spine and pelvis, then dives into the leg and then flows down the back of the leg all the way to the foot. So the sciatic nerve is big, it's important, and it will very easily get tight for a variety of reasons. And when it does, it can cause a lot of problems. Not just pain in a classic sciatica sense, pain or paresthesias, tingling, numbness, burning, but a tight sciatic nerve can cause other issues that seem orthopedic. A tight hamstring, a tight calf, a stiff or even swollen ankle and foot. A lot of orthopedic running, pain, and issues very often is generated from a tight sciatic nerve. So we want to keep track of that, and we want to promote sciatic nerve mobility, not only to make sure that we don't have nerve symptoms, but to make sure everything in the lower leg is both pain-free and mobile as can be. So why does this get tight? There's a variety of reasons why all nerves, but in particular the sciatic nerve, gets tight. Posture things. If we don't have good posture in our spine, the nerve can get sticky in the spine. The problem with the sciatic nerve is if we sit a lot, it can get compressed in the tissues of our posterior pelvis, like the piriformis muscle. But then running, both the impact of running, but then just using the muscles so much, glute muscles, hamstring muscles, calf muscles, and they are contracting constantly around that sciatic nerve. Over time, that combination of impact, use, dehydration can make that nerve, which is supposed to have room to slide and glide through this leg, it can make it tight. And so we want to do things to assess nerve mobility and promote it. And so we're going to break here for a little anatomy discussion to look at a little bit closer look at how that sciatic nerve comes off and some of the novel strategies that we're going to use to get it moving. It's Joe here showing some more detailed anatomy about where nerves live and how we can use some anatomy knowledge to improve their mobility. So here's just a zoom out view of what the sciatic nerve looks like. So you can see up here, the sciatic nerve is made of a collection of nerves from the lumbar to the sacrum that sort of coalesce in the pelvis and then exit the back of the leg and do a lot of stuff. So that nerve can get tight anywhere along this length. It can also get tight even above the spine, which is why cervical, thoracic, and even upper extremity movements can impact the mobility of the sciatic nerve. But by and large, where the sciatic nerve tends to get tightest is where it initially exits at the spine of the pelvis. Taking a closer look, here is the front of the pelvis, and you can see these nerves coming together. They coalesce into this big old sciatic nerve. All this begins in the front of the pelvis, runs through the back, and then goes through the piriformis on its way down into the leg. So if we want to get creative with how to get the sciatic nerve moving, we want to do more than just yank at it through the hamstring. If there's some unique tensions up in the pelvis and in the lumbar spine, what if we wiggled on the spine in a more creative way? Taking a closer look, this is now the back side of the spine, so you can see the nerves that make up this big sciatic nerve. It's about 5 or 6 branches consecutive levels of the lumbar and the sacrum, these little nerve roots then coalesce into the sciatic. So very often sciatica issues originate from a stiffness, stickiness of this nerve root as it's coming off of the spine. Here's a side view. So now you have different branches of this nerve, but you can see there's a space. And in the real world, unfortunately, the space, there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of fascia, a lot of tissue. And then over time, as we get older and run a lot of miles, we can get some wear and tear, maybe some extra bony formation. And now the space gets smaller. So again, can we move these bones in a creative way to get that moving? And so here's now what the spine looks. This is a back view. The middle column is a side view, back view again. If all we do is flex, which is what these white vertebrae show, you're just tensioning. That's extension. But what if we added a side bend? What if we added a rotation? And especially with side bending, we actually open up spaces so that these nerves have just more room to move. And so that's what we're going to try to do. These two on-the-go stretches are going to employ some alternative movements like side bending and rotation to wiggle on it, the nerve in a different way, but also to do some spinal movements that free up, that open some space into the spine with the goal of allowing those nerve roots to be able to wiggle free. This is Joe again. We're back now talking about how we're going to assess for and then provide novel and more gentle ways to move the sciatic nerve. So to assess sciatic nerve mobility or assess any nerve mobility, what we want to do is to put that particular nerve on a moderate amount of tension. So for the sciatic nerve, because it bends around the back of our leg, I'm going to put my leg up on an object of moderate height. Depending on how mobile you are, you may go lower or you go higher, but you want to put your leg straight up on something so that you feel just a mild to moderate stretch. So I feel that, but how I know that what I'm feeling is a nerve sensation or a nerve tension is I now am going to apply a spinal movement. And if that sensation of stretch increases, it's because of the nerve. Because that nerve starts in my head and goes through my spine. If I move my spine and I feel more, it's because I'm tensioning the nerve. I'm not moving the hamstring, I'm moving my trunk. So right now I feel a moderate tension, I slump down, and because I have nerve tension in my body, I can feel increased stretch. A positive sign for people in general is a significant increase in stretch, where it may feel painful, something that replicates an issue that you have. That's a big one. So if you have a tight hamstring or a tight calf or foot or ankle pain, and you put your leg up into this position and perform a spinal movement like slumping, and if that replicates your pain area, it's very likely the sciatic nerve is involved. And for me, I have chronic calf, ankle, foot issues from my sciatic nerve, and sure enough, when I do this, I can feel added tension right here into my calf. So that tells me I want to spend some time to get my sciatic nerve moving. So as we saw in the anatomy pictures, that sciatic nerve comes off in the spine as a collection of nerves that coalesce, but it comes off of the lumbar vertebrae. So what we want to do is we want to do some wiggles to that lumbar vertebrae. But what a lot of conventional stretching does is it simply flexes or tensions the nerve. And these nerves, these electrical cables, are really sensitive. They don't like being yanked. And when they get yanked, they can get even more irritable. So if you try to stretch a nerve too aggressively, say you want to do a lot of hamstring stretching and you yank on this too much, what very often happens is your pain flares. It's worse for a day or two. You get way tighter, and or sometimes you might even get swelling or other symptoms as a result of overstretching this nerve. So we want to come up with more novel strategies than just yanking on it. That said, what you find out in the world for resources for nerve stretching very often are aggressive tensioners. So the number one thing that you'll see is a slump, very similar to our test of just slumping down and tensioning the nerve. And again, that can work, but it can also be really aggressive. Now, what you'll also find out in the world is something called a nerve floss. And a nerve floss is this idea of we have the nerve on tension from proximal to distal. If I tension while at the same time release on the other end, that flosses that nerve. So I'm taking the tension, that's giving it. Then I reverse it, the foot's taking the tension as it wraps around the ankle. My head comes up, it gives the slack. So it's slack and tension, vice versa. So that is a less aggressive stretch or mobilization strategy. But again, I think we can do better by doing more than just flexing. That brings us to our two strategies. So my two favorite on-the-go nerve strategies involve different spinal movements. The first is side bending. So you're going to set up the same thing as you did before, putting the leg up, straight knee. Then to make sure that we're really in a good position, I want to make sure that my pelvis is pointed straight ahead, or if anything, slightly towards the foot. That's going to also add a little bit of stretch. Here's where then we get creative. So now that we're in this position, I feel a moderate tension. I'm going to side bend away. And side bending away does two things. Number one, I'm still tensioning because I'm taking the nerve through my spine away, but it's also gapping the joints of the lumbar spine as we saw in the anatomy pictures. And the gapping is just going to possibly make it easier for that nerve to get free. And so my stretch is doing an oscillating on and off side bend, reaching towards the big toe. In this case, right leg is up. I'm reaching my left arm to my left big toe. On and off. And when I go on, I feel more stretch. When I go off, it decreases. That's my stretch in this gentle oscillating way, on and off. Okay? Side bend away, that's the first one. The second one, same position. Leg comes up, pelvis points towards the foot. This time, I'm going to rotate towards. I like putting my hands here so I can feel that my trunk is really moving and it's not just my head or my shoulders. So I am twisting my whole spine towards that foot, aiming in this case for my left shoulder to twist down to my right foot. So same thing, a rotational force at the joint is just another creative way to wiggle free the nerve and to add just a different dimension of mobilization to the nerve. So same thing, on and off. I might do 10 or 20 of these before I rest. So those are the two novel strategies. Now let's talk about how we can get creative. And so if we want to apply the flossing idea to these stretches, all we need to think about then is, can we wiggle the nerve in a creative way from below and or from above? So if I wanted to do some creative tensioners, say I'm going to go into my rotation, so I'm twisting towards you guys, but how about if I now do an ankle pump? So I'm not twisting, I just go into my twist, hold it, ankle pump. Or maybe I do a knee bend and extension, or I can do, this is a hip hinge, forward and back. What you choose to do may be impacted by where your pain is. So for me, for example, if I have a lot of issues at my calf and my ankle, it may be prudent of me to spend more of my time in a position where I am actively moving the nerve through the painful area, my foot and ankle. If yours is maybe more behind the knee, that's when moving the knee would be good. If you have more of a piriformis issue, then doing a hip hinge may be good. So that is a lower body strategy. Then we can also think about getting creative with upper body. So here I am again. I come up, I'm in a position, so I can be here, I can maybe, let's go into my side bend this time. So here, what if I add cervical flexion and extension? I could add cervical rotation, and this becomes really interesting then, and it may highlight how dysfunctions in the neck can even impact tension in the lower leg. Again, because that sciatic nerve flows from the head and the neck all the way through. You may be surprised that if you get into a position and then add arm motions, flexing or abducting, or doing an open armed position into your twist may add a stretch. Finally, getting really creative and really athletic, we can floss in a variety of ways. And again, flossing is sort of this paired opposite movement of something in the leg with something in the body. So we initially went with the head down, foot down. That's pretty easy athletically. But what if we did head down, knee bent? Again, these get a little bit zany in how you do them, but any movement where, say, you are slackening a little bit while taking up that slack on the opposite end counts as a floss. So the take-home message is nerves need to move, but they're highly sensitive, and there's complexity as to how they get tight. And so let's get creative with our nerve stretching. Let's wiggle them in a more gentle way, but in a more three-dimensional way. And these two stretches are terrific on the go. So how I will do these stretches is, the nice thing with something like this is this can be a chair, 2 stairs and a staircase, a bench or a rock or a bumper at the trailhead, and all you're doing is putting your leg up and you're moving your body. And you're just doing some on and off movement, trying to wiggle that nerve free. Nerves don't like prolonged holds, so try oscillating movements. So low duration, we're talking about a second or 2 at the most with that tension on. Moderate repetitions, but if you're really dealing with a tight, stubborn nerve, and you've been diagnosed this by a medical professional, it's most useful to do a small number of these repetitions, but several times during your day. But if you're like a lot of runners and you're moderately tight and you're just looking to accentuate your nerve mobility, add this into your routine and try it immediate pre-run to see not only can it decrease some aches and pains, but it can improve the overall mobility of your running stride. So give that a try and good luck.